with Renee.
Yo. We wait all week and all day for more. Saturdays with Renee.
Yes. What's up, world? Welcome to episode 75 of Saturdays with Renee, featuring Renee Johnston, Jared Ball, maybe Geechee. Who knows?
I'm like, is he? I just don't know. Did he answer my text message this morning? I don't know.
I'm behind on so many texts. As I said to y'all yesterday, I said I saw 75 in the thing. It was like, I'm out. I just intellectually shut down.
I can't do it. Yeah. It's too much.
Yeah. Greetings, everybody coming in. Please do like, share, subscribe, do all of the things. Support the Patreon. Links in the show description. Welcome. Got a big show. And yeah. So sorry.
I'm excited. No, I'm good. I'm excited. We we stood out in the cold in when Andy Ellis announced his campaign launch, and we had a great, it was a good turnout considering how unbelievably cold it was outside that day. But on the upside is I learned about some stuff that was happening in Maryland that I was completely unaware of. And so, the goal here is always to point out the things and bring out the organizers and give people space. And so we're going to roll with that.
I'm glad. Yeah, because this is something I've been only like tangentially aware of, even though it's not that far, taking place not far from me. But as we'll be talking more about, there's a lot going on not far from me that I haven't been much paying attention to. It's going to have to change here. So,
man, it's hard to keep up with all of it, man. It's hard. I mean, it's a lot. It'd be a lot.
At one thing, they do 10 things over there.
Right.
And then you look at that and they do 20 more over there.
Right.
And then
I swear it's all intentional. Like, we're just going to keep you on the hamster wheel. And we're going to keep throwing things at you that you got to like bat down so you don't fall out of the hamster wheel. And in the meanwhile, we're just going to keep shitting on you. And, and that's going to be how it rolls. That's it.
That's why I was, just talking to some folks yesterday and saying, time to be even healthier. Just out of spite. I feel the attack. So I'm just drinking more water now. Out of spite, I'm gonna survive. For no other
I'm hanging. Right. I'm hanging.
Just because I see what you're trying to do. So.
Exactly. Okay, but before we bring Robert up, I just have one really important question. Mm-hmm. Are you bringing me one of those shirts when you come up next week? Yes.
No, but only because I only made one. I only ever made one.
Worst, man.
I know. I made one shirt, one hat, one jacket. And I should. I just, I don't know. I should have a whole.
You should have like a box of those next to your books. And then people get a book, they get a shirt.
They get a book, they get a shirt. Yeah, that is a good idea. Well, I'm about to get rid of the last books I have this week.
And you had that's good. That's a good sign. Because you had a lot of them bad boys.
I had a lot and finally getting them out. So, but hopefully some of the critics will read. But yeah, we're gonna have fun with that later in the show. I think because it did come up.
I ended up watching the whole thing. Well, on double speed. But
it still watches. It still counts.
Yeah,
it still counts. So definitely stay tuned for that. And I will say this that the full public release will be tomorrow, but the interview I just did with your favorite filmmaker, Johan Grimon Prez, for soundtrack to a coup d'etat. I think, in all seriousness, Renee, given our text exchange with Mtume yesterday, I think the next round of discussions of this film are going to be among the most fruitful and beneficial and, dare I say, legendary conversations about media, race, class,
I agree.
colonialism.
I
That
agree.
it's
I agree.
easily, you're gonna easily crack a top 10 with that one,
I agree.
because the text exchange was bananas, and I was even mad at my family for interrupting it. I was a little bit salty. Like, I gotta stop this I love you all.
Yeah, it was good.
So
And Tume blows my mind sometimes because he says stuff,
he
and
he's sharp.
I'm like, I don't even know like what mental plane Tume lives on because I'm just not like I'm not up there, and so
Yeah, I can't wait. It was a mad. I was mad that the 15-month. I'm telling you, I was mad that my 19-year-old was had to get picked up. I was like,
it's craziness.
listen,
It's
we're about
craziness.
to. But I do think it's gonna be bananas.
I agree.
Uh,
I agree.
yeah, shout out to Lisa Fager, even in advance. Not quite the spelling of her name, but we get Lisa, old school homegirl of mine. I credit with a lot of my evolving knowledge around the history of the music industry and how that thing works, and fighting a strong fight uh, against cancer. She's doing a lot. She's doing a lot. So salute to Lisa Fager. She was not thrilled with my electoral voting choices. She was loud in condemnation of my voting choices, but
That's okay.
it
It's
is
okay.
okay. And much love and salute to her and the work. So but
Well,
yeah,
I mean, I guess without any further ado, let's not have Rob waiting too long.
all right.
Um, we want to pull him up. Rob, you ready?
Welcome, Robert.
There we go.
Yes, I'm ready. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we got
Absolutely. And can I say, Robert, before we get started, as a former wannabe drummer, I gotta say your last name rings legendary. That's a strong last name you bring into the stage right there. I'm just
Thanks. Yeah, I know
but
about the funky drummer. I grew up listening to a lot of James Brown and Public Enemy's "Fight the Power" when Chuck D starts off like sound of the funky drummer. I got the reference, but I have no relation to the funky drummer, unfortunately. So, but thanks. I
hey,
appreciate it.
hey, no, it's a nice symbolic salute regardless. And welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good
welcome.
morning. Good morning. Thank you both for having me. I really
And
appreciate and love the work that you both do, both on
thank
screen and off screen.
I'm really appreciative of you being here. And I will say in advance to people, and I've gotten permission. My older brother, my only brother, his name is also Robert. So I'm definitely gonna default to Rob because that's what I call him. So,
That's fine. That's fine. No worries. No worries. And also, just to backtrack just a little bit, I'm familiar with Sister Lisa Fager. The work that she's doing with the Black Georgetown Foundation. In fact, just a quick shout out. Next week, DC is going to be hearing testimony about a fund to help fund African American cemetery preservation groups. And so the 19th is the public hearing on that. So for anyone that's in the DC area, please attend and submit written testimony. That would be gratefully helpful. And she would, and Lisa would appreciate that gratefully. So
awesome. Thank you. So as is our typical what we do, we always want our guests to tell the folks who they are and why they're here. So if you could give folks some background, tell them about you, tell them about the organization, the general work, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, absolutely. So hi everyone, my name is Robert Stubblefield. My pronouns are he, him, destroy the empire. I am with the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. I wear many hats within the organization. I've been with BACC for about 9 years now. And a little bit about BACC. We were formed, about 10 years ago to not only stop the desecration of the historic Moses Macedonia African Cemetery, but demand the return of the land to the descendant community, which is us, and making sure that we have that land returned so we can establish a proper museum and a sacred space, not only to educate the community on what has happened in River Road, but also turn into a place of community power. That's basically me and what I do, and a general idea of what BACC does and is fighting for.
Thank you. So it's interesting, and I was really, really excited as you sent us all the links and the information about what's happening down there. So when I was in high school, my mother was part of the big fight in New York City to acknowledge the African burial ground that they discovered in Lower Manhattan. So that, like, I so like deeply remember all like the meetings and all of the things that she was doing, and eventually it did work, right? There's an entire like set up in Lower Manhattan. They have a memorial, and so for me this really touched very deeply. So I'm on one hand, like, I don't understand why not even in death our bodies are like valued or heated as things that like should be protected in some way. But it's wild to me. And so from the New York side, I'm somewhat familiar with, because it was basically the same thing, right? Like they went to build something and they found a body. And then they were trying to like quickly like get through it, so they didn't. And people were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Their bodies! Like, can we not do this with the bodies?" So can you talk a little bit about like that history, like how this all really from the beginning, like what's the background of how this all got started?
And forgive me again, but the segue is too inviting. One of the things I learned from Lisa's work is that the music industry has long said people are worth more dead than alive. And here again, puns intended, unfortunately, there's an eerie colonial similarity to that. So again, yeah, please.
Yes. And so I want to answer, like, I think Renee asked a rhetorical question at first, like, why is this happening? But like basically, why Black cemeteries are at the threat of desecration or being desecrated, because it goes back to the age-old question: are Black people human? Because we have to remember, like, in the Constitution, we're still designated as 3/5 of a human being, and the Dred Scott decision, whether people echo that in their subconscious or not, it goes back, says like Black people have no rights on which the white power structure is bound to respect. And so that's like goes back to the question. So the history of Moses Macedonia African Cemetery, and then a little bit more into the history of BACC and how we got started with the fight, is that Moses Cemetery is one of the oldest African American cemeteries in the state of Maryland. It goes all the way back to the colonial period, back when in that part of Bethesda, Maryland, that section of River Road, you had roughly, we call them death camps, but the historians want to call them plantations. You had the Councilman, Loughborough, Ray, Shoemaker, and Posey death camps, and where they originally started off growing tobacco, because tobacco was Maryland's cash crop. Well, by the early 1800s, since tobacco sucks the nutrients out the soil, and of course with the ending of the quote unquote international slave trade, Maryland turned to domestic breeding, and some of those same death camps, like the Councilman of Loughborough, became breeding farms for Black, for them to sell our ancestors down to the deep South. What we began noticing is that, so when they died, and you have to remember, per the census records that we were able to uncover, the average lifespan of a Black person was about 20 years old. So think about this for a second. By the time you were 10 years old, you had already lived half of your lifespan. And so there was a swamp that they couldn't figure out how to produce anything, so they wound up just dumping the bodies there on one part of the on one. That's how like Moses, we call that section Old Moses, became established. So fast forwarding post Civil War into the Emancipation era, that the former slave quarters became a thriving Black community, and it was named after a matriarch by the name of Charlotte Gray, who purchased about 10 acres of land. And, so they called it Graysville in her honor. And by the early 1910s, an African American benevolent association known as the Brothers and Sisters of Moses, they purchased about 2 acres of land adjacent to where that swamp was, and formally established Moses Cemetery, as we like to call that area, New Moses. And so this was a thriving Black working class community. In fact, it had a school. It had their own baseball team, aptly named the River Road Lions. It also had the church, Macedonia Baptist Church, which is currently the last physical and cultural institution of the thriving River Road community. And you would figure, with a thriving Black working class community where people had farms and were stonemasons that literally helped build the bunkers of the White House and the mansions in Potomac, Maryland, in an idyllic world, this would go, yeah, we need to include them. And instead, they began finding ways to displace the River Road community. And sometimes displacement, or as I like to call it, domestic imperialism, it doesn't happen all at once. It starts in waves. So the first wave began around the mid to late 1930s when the Washington Sanitary Suburban Commission began mandating that homes now have to have indoor plumbing. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not against indoor plumbing in and of itself. I think it's necessary. But when you begin charging Black residents higher water utility bills than your white counterparts, and we have to remember this is happening during the Great Depression during this time period, that begins, some people say, well, I can't really pay it. So that's the first wave. The second wave starts happening when they start issuing tax liens against people's property, people's homes. When, or it's like, people are already paying their tax bills, they're already paying everything on time, but now you're saying, well, now you got this additional tax. So, and if you can't pay the tax, then of course what local governments do, they use the power of eminent domain. So, well, now we're going to take it over. The third wave begins, with the threat of violence. And we're not just talking the violence of the cops, we're also talking about the violence of the Ku Klux Klan. And people get shocked when they find out Montgomery County had very active chapters of the Ku Klux Klan. And I'm just like, you do know this is the South, right? Like, pretty much, in fact, Harvey Matthews, who grew up on River Road, talks about blackout nights where the residents in a lot of historic Black communities throughout Montgomery County would turn the lights off whenever the Ku Klux Klan would come riding, with the hopes that the Klan wouldn't look into your house and try and drag you out. And that's exactly what wound up happening to families like Harvey Matthews and the Cunninghams, where the Klan would literally come, they would drag the man of the house, they'll drag them off into the woods, beat them near to death, and then make them sign this paperwork saying you no longer own your farm. And so by the late 50s, early 60s, the last residents of River Road, Graysville, got pushed out. And the only things that were left were the church and the cemetery. Well, what they began doing to one part of the cemetery is that they began building an apartment complex, the Westwood Towers. And they took the cemetery and they began paving, began trying to pave to put a parking lot. When during the early times of construction, they had to pause because they were finding bodies. They kept finding bones. And so it got to the point that the construction foreman at the time said, I'm done with this. I'm going to build this trench and we're going to push bones and the tombstones. We're going to push all of that in there. And they began doing that and began paving over to build the parking lot. So mid 60s, the cemetery is desecrated. And that's a little bit of it. So fast forwarding to about 2015, 2016, and this is how BACC got started. I think this is a good segue. That at the time, Reverend Segun and Miss Marsha, they had just become the Reverend and First Lady of Macedonia Baptist Church. And they had a meeting with the Montgomery County Planning Board. And the planner at the time, just provide context for those who aren't aware, Montgomery County just announced a planning development plan called Thrive 2050. and basically began like turning certain segments, had like master plans. And so that part of River Road became part of the West Barge sector plan. And the planner at the time was a woman named Gwen Wright. And so she wanted to have a meeting with members of Macedonia Baptist Church to pretty much get them to rubber stamp what they were doing. And so she's describing the plan. She's describing, you know, we're going to build some homes here. We're going to build a parking garage. And in this area, they allegedly say there's a cemetery, but we don't think it exists. Well, Harvey Matthews, who is a deacon at the church, is also on the board of trustees, says at that meeting, he raised his hand and says, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but it's not an alleged cemetery. That is a cemetery. And I know this because me and my friends grew up playing in that cemetery because we were not allowed to play at the local parks. And when he said that, the members of the playing board that were there like got pale white. They're already white, but they got super pale because they were not expecting living history. And so Marcia then said, well, if that's a cemetery, then where are the bodies? And then they said, well, we don't know. Well, then here's another problem. We have a crime scene on our hands. And so this is how BACC was started. And at first, they were denying, they were saying, well, it's an alleged cemetery. It's an alleged cemetery. And the county council at the time, they hired a consulting firm to basically try to do a hit piece, trying to say BACC was being delusional. Well, this consulting firm, the Audrey Group, they released a study saying, no, that's a cemetery. In fact, one of the things that they recommended that the county do, that the county still has not done to this very day, was saying you need to work with the descendant community, you need to gather the history, you need to do an archaeological survey, and you need to do a proper delineation, because so much disturbance has gone on over there that you need to properly identify the borders. And they also identify other parts of the cemetery that need to have archaeological studies on because of bodies that are buried there. And to this day, the county was just ignored. Like, you figured that the county, after paying for that consulting group, and the consulting group company that need to do that, right? The council was like, basically said, we're not going to do that. And so for the past few years, we basically took the county, well, pretty much had to take the Housing Opportunities Commission to court. I know this is confusing, but bear with me here. The cemetery is broken up into, I hate using the term parcels, but until we come up with something better, I gotta use that language. So you have two parcels, 175 and 177. 175 is where Westwood Towers is, and that is currently operated by the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County. You have parcel 177, which is currently overseen by the Montgomery County Planning Board. And then you have parcel 242, which is currently in the hands of a private developer. And so in regards to 175, we were able to take HOC to court, and we recently had a victory at the Maryland Supreme Court that basically puts a stalemate, saying HOC, it pretty much says HOC can sell the property, but descendant communities have the right not only to pursue legal claims, but to pursue equitable relief. And so that's still in the court. And then in regards of parcel 242, we just have opened a lawsuit against the private developer 1784 Holdings. So that's where we are currently in terms of the legal battles. In terms of the street actions, we're doing protests. We're doing course community outreach and education. We've actually been building up, like working with environmental groups, connecting the history, the struggles of the desecration and the environmental struggle. We've also been, building what we feel is a true liberation movement, because not only within the context of stopping desecration, which for people who may not be aware is considered a war crime and an act of genocide, but it's also very important that we make sure that the liberation movement comes into power, so desecration isn't even a thought in people's minds. So I know that's a lot, so I'm definitely, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free. I know.
No, so people in the chat are saying like the oral history that you're giving is amazing. And just, I want to make sure that we recognize that, because like facts and reality, like to be able to recount all of that information through the decades so people can understand historical relevance of what's happening, right?
Yes.
So
history is very important. In fact,
it is.
One of the things that I believe it was Kwame Ture once said, if you're serious about being a revolutionary, you have to study history. And I think that's very important because history, not only do you tell the truth, but you begin recognizing patterns. So if you see this, you're supposed to be able to nip the problem in the bud before it becomes a huge problem, because like I've seen this before, we know what happens.
Go ahead, Jared.
No.
I was like waiting. No, you took off
Well,
the mute. You go.
no. Well, initially I only came off mute to um add on to the salute to the oral history and the role it's meant to play here. I was curious, and I don't mean to take us away from the specific issue, but when you mentioned the goal is to build a movement, could you say a little bit more about, if I understood you correctly, could you say a little bit more about what you would like to see that movement
Oh,
ultimately encompass or head towards or
sure.
merge with, or yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So basically, when I said like a liberation movement, and within the context of Moses, is because it's very clear that what's going on, like with the current system that we have now, is playing a huge role into why cemeteries like Moses are being desecrated. And people get shocked when they hear that, well, Montgomery County is a Democratic county. And it's kind of like, doesn't matter if it's a Dem or Republican, they're both wings of the party of imperialism. And that's a problem because, quite frankly, the party of imperialism, whether it's domestic or global, all it cares about is expanding its power base through fascism. And so what we've realized, and we realized this many years ago, is that in order to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again, we have to build a liberation movement to come into power. And once that movement comes into power, it can begin making the changes that we need. Yes, like making sure that the desecration of Black cemeteries and Indigenous cemeteries doesn't happen, of course, but also making sure that people's basic needs are met, that people's right to protest is firmly protected, the fact that people's right to freedom of assembly. Because what happens within the concept of BACC is that whenever we protest, battalions of police are called. And even in our early days, when we first got started, before other groups in Montgomery County began coming up and speaking out against police terrorism, BACC, we were tackling having to combat police terrorism on our own. And this is like, pre-2018. And I say pre-2018 because that was when Robert White was killed by a Montgomery County police officer. And that's when a group that BACC is also part of, the Silver Spring Justice Coalition, because we joined that because we saw that Black Lives Matter both in life and in death, from the womb to the tomb. Because not only are we attacked when we're alive, but even when we're dead, we can't even rest in peace. And so what we want to do in terms of, I know I've said this before, but it bears repeating, is that we need our liberation movement to come into power. And so that's why we've been working with groups like the Black is Black Coalition, the Uhuru Movement. We've even worked with several local Black organizations in Montgomery County, like Racial Justice Now and the UNIA, to form the Black United Front of Montgomery, and EPIC to form the Black United Front of Montgomery County, to challenge like the dominant power structure.
I mean, I always say it, right? Yeah, there has to be a point where folks start doing multiple things at once and together, right? Like you all singularly as a body that started with one specific goal, right? Like if you're not getting support from other organizations and you all are not understanding the extent to which your goal is impacted by the other struggles, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
Right. So that's important.
Yes, because one of the things that we, have stressed when we do our political education webinars with other organizations and other community members is that we talk about how the desecration of cemeteries ties into the issue of land justice, right? As Malcolm X once said, you cannot have a revolution without discussing land, because land is justice, land is power. And so oftentimes, like, the lands that have been taken through domestic imperialism, or as some folks like to call it, gentrification, you're seeing historic black communities being pushed out. You're also seeing in areas in Montgomery County that have a large Hispanic population. They're now starting to feel the effects of that. So now they're starting to realize they have to get organized and having to come together to truly, like, build that community power. Because oftentimes, and for people who aren't familiar with Maryland politics in general, or Montgomery County politics specifically, it's the worst kept secret that developers run Montgomery County. It's the worst kept secret. You know, a lot of times developers, they bankroll a lot of the politicians, and the politicians, and we know the playbook. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. They can speak a progressive game, but once they get into power, they pivot right back to they pivot right back to the right. Tax breaks for developers, and then when they get confronted about whether it's desecration or over policing, they try and go, well, I understand what you're saying, but we got to talk about the economics of it all. And I'm like, yeah, we can have the discussion. They're not mutually exclusive, right? Like, we even shown people how building a museum in a sacred space in that part of River Road would actually help double the money for Montgomery County, because Montgomery County likes to talk about, well, we're broke, we can't really finance this. Well, here's something that can help finance that, and y'all keep coming up with excuses not to do it. So
Montgomery County claiming broke is hilarious.
It
And
really
I would
is.
just invite people to investigate. Maybe you could talk some about the demographics of the county. But that to me is just hilarious. And as someone, now a candidate for the Hickory Ridge rep to the Columbia Association Board here in Howard County, I can attest that, all jokes aside, the developer issue is one of the things I'm slowly learning has been worse than I thought right here in my own neck of the woods. People, between the developers and the chemical polluters, it's getting wild. It's been wild out here. I'm late. So yeah, salute to you again for all of that. But yeah, would
Thank
you
you. So
would you maybe want to say a word or two about Montgomery County for folks who might not be familiar with this area of
Sure,
the country?
absolutely. So for people who aren't aware about Montgomery County, Maryland, Montgomery County loves to brag about its diversity. And it is a pretty diverse county. It's considered, and I hate this term, majority minority. But it's a majority minority county, but but they love using that as their selling point. When you get here, you find that the anti-blackness in schools, and as someone who is an alum of the Montgomery County public school system, the anti-blackness is egregious within the school system. Like, we lead in the school to prison pipeline. They lead. We also are seeing a huge increase not only in homelessness, but also in the fact that even with the passing of the rent stabilization laws, you still have massive eviction going on. We also see in the fact that they've expanded the police state, in the sense that while we may not have a cop city like you have like in Baltimore or the building in New York or in Atlanta, they're expanding the police state with the drone surveillance program, which they piloted first in places like Wheaton and downtown Silver Spring, which are predominantly Black and Hispanic areas. Now they're expanding it to the Germantown and Bethesda area. But you also are now, in terms of the expansion of that, is that now they're trying to partner with those door camera companies like Ring, where they can also get like surveillance footage from your Ring camera or Google camera that you have. So that's the expansion of the police state. So people, they hear about Montgomery County, talk about diversity, but diversity without liberation doesn't really mean anything. It's just a selling point. And to the comment, yes, Montgomery County and Howard County are some of the wealthiest counties, but the only caveat that I would like to say is that it's a wealthy county if you live in places like the Bethesdas, the Potomacs, or the Shady Groves. If you live in a place like the Briggs Cheneys, the White Oaks, it's kind of a completely different story. That's why I often say there's Montgomery County, then there's MoCo, there's Howard County, and then there's HoCo. It's like the tale of two counties, the tale of two cities. so to speak.
We thank you for that, and we've talked a little bit about it here as it relates to this area. But that's a very important point that I think relates to a lot of the country and the country itself.
Mhm.
Overall, the numbers look good. Overall, some things can look impressive and diverse. But once you look underneath, once you just lift the hood a little bit, it's not what it is. And then
Mhm.
then as was shown here, even with what are supposed to be some of the best schools in the country and the most integrated schools, once all these different people go into schools, they get segregated in their experience within the exact same building. So
Mhm.
it's very slick what goes on around here. But yeah,
Yeah.
but it is
The
still weird to hear Montgomery County claim broke.
Yeah.
That was yeah.
No, I definitely agree. In fact, going back a little bit, the hyper segregation within the school system, and even like today, like it was already bad when I was there, but it's gotten worse. Like when I like put it this way, the high school I went to, Paint Branch, when I graduated, it was about 49% black. Now it is 75% black. In contrast, if you go to Bethesda, where you got schools like Walt Whitman, it's 73% white. If you go to Wooten High School, it's 72% white. And if you go to Bethesda Chevy Chase, it's 70% white. We call that the W cluster. And that is, and you see the difference how those schools get funded versus schools
That's
like
the
Paint
W
Branch
cluster.
and Northwood High School. It is a huge, complete difference.
The
That's
W cluster is hilarious. I'm sorry.
I
That's
love it. That's
Yeah.
great. It's a great way
yeah.
to put it. It's a great way to put it. So I lived in Prince George's County for like 7 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole different beast.
Yeah.
once you once
I
you
mean,
once you go past the Air Force Base, it's like a whole different world.
yep. No, I agree.
Maryland, right?
I agree.
Well,
I agree. I spent part of my childhood in Prince George's County. Shout out to Brandywine, and I also went to Bowie State University and seeing the contrast. Like you go to Bowie State, it's kind of like country, but it's kind of like in a pretty decent, nice area. But like once you go past, like I agree, once you go by Andrews Air Force Base, and you're going into Suitland, you're going into Temple Hills, Capitol Heights, District Heights, and it's a completely different world out there. So I'm hip.
it's
So.
a whole different world. So so just real quick, because we tend to be all over the place, but I want to make sure that I ask one of the questions that I have in mind. So you talked about what the group is doing with the lawsuits with HOP, and then specifically with the private developer. Can you talk a little bit about what the planning committee is doing, the Montgomery Planning Committee? Because I'm curious about like what
Okay. Yeah.
the actual the actual like government of the community is doing in response to what's going
Okay.
on.
Okay. Well, the government community and HOC, it's quasi government. They get some of their funding from Montgomery County, and Montgomery County appoints the commissioners. So that's why we include HOC in the planning board, because the planning board is appointed by the county executive and the county council. So with the planning board, with their part of the cemetery, with the part of the cemetery that they currently control, parcel 177, they've been, and to provide context, they're talking about something called the Willard Branch Greenway Project. And basically it's supposed to be like this clean environment. And they want to like turn this into a walkway and a bike path. And where that part of Moses Cemetery is, they want to build a park on top of that portion of the cemetery. And their idea of memorializing a cemetery is putting a plaque that basically states the place where your kids are playing on and where your dogs are using as a bathroom is built on top of an African American cemetery. That's what the planning board wants to do with that part of Moses. And we've been protesting the planning board, the county council, most of them. And, I know this is going to kind of get shocked. It shouldn't be shocking, but pretty much the council, they either flat out want to ignore BACC, or they will say they'll help us, but then they turn around and they don't. They won't even issue a letter condemning desecration of Moses Cemetery, which I can't say I'm shocked. But at the same time, as it's still disgusting, because some of them are the same people that claim to be very progressive, but their actions tell a whole different story. not like, and keeping things within the context of Moses here, is that they will keep trying to say, oh, it's a complicated issue. It's like, how is it complicated? It's very simple. Like, one of the things that we say, can you return the land to us? They try to say, well, we can't give it back to you guys because we can't just give away public land. But yet we notice that they give away public land to the developers to help expand or build apartments. They give public land away to build a park, or they enter joint public-private partnerships to build an environmentally conservative project. So, and we've called them out on their hypocrisies. You guys can give away public land for A, B, C, and D. When it comes to something, and mind you, this is the same council that a few years back in the height of even before 2020, so it was around 2019, issued a racial equity statement saying that we're going to be looking at things through a racial equity lens, that we are going to make sure that racial justice is a key part of what we do as the council. And yet, when it comes to, and I want to be very clear, it's not even just Moses that's being desecrated. There's another Black cemetery in the Sandy Spring community, which is a historically Black community, that's been battling desecration for about 17 years now, 17 going on 18 years now. And the council, again, is the council and the state delegates that represent that area are just being totally silent.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Look, the goal is to bring the guests on who are going to get that response, who have Jared shaking his head and the eyebrows up into the top of his head. Like, this is the goal for me every week. This is the goal.
I mean, you've said a lot. I don't want to suggest that it just now got there, but I mean, but the point about, I mean, the whole point about we can't, it's always that thing. We can't help you with the public until, except for the private corporate world. Like we got nothing for you for books, for healthcare, for food, shelter, jobs. Oh, an elite company needs something. Here's everything. Here's the land. Here's the labor. Here's the wealth produced from it. It's just, so yeah, it's just,
it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
They wildin'. Like, there's nothing, they wildin'. But this is always what happens, right? And this is why we're always having these conversations about like how do you manage being part of a community that is constantly at ends with the people who are writing the policy that most impact the material conditions of your life, right?
Yes.
So, like when we have these conversations often about how like fruitless electoral politics is, like, these are the situations that I think of, right? Because that county board, how did they get there? Right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not participating in the process, and again, like, this is my conundrum because I really don't know what the right answer is. But if you're not participating in the process, the people who participate are the ones who allow these assholes the position to be able to do these things. So then it's this constant circle, right? This constant rotation of not getting the stuff you need, but also like not wanting to engage with a system that literally exists to not give you the things you need. Like, I don't have a good answer, but I think it's important that we recognize that this is what happens, right? So you have an entire community of people, and I was very, very entranced. Like the two articles that you wrote about the lies, like how they're trying to represent your group in public spaces, right? And they're trying to do this, like all these lies surrounding the things they do. And this is always what happens, right? Like the forces come out and they extend all of this nonsense to basically shut you down and to shut you up and to make you the enemy. Yes. When the reality is they're the problem, right? Like, their bodies. Like, why are we? I don't even understand how we live in a place where we're fighting about not creating, like, not putting a dog park on top of bodies. Like, like, right? No, like, how?
So one of my heroes that I love is a man by the name of Amilcar Cabral. And Cabral understood that when you're fighting for liberation, that your opponent especially when you're fighting against the state, you're fighting against a state that has on paper all the advantages. They have the resources, they have the money, they have the enforcement arm, whether it's the military, the police, or a combination of the two. And they also have control of the media apparatus. So how do we counter that, right? Well, Cabral and others like Mahel, Ho Chi Minh, they understood, and Antonio Gramsci, is that they understood you have to fight back by any means necessary. That means you have to counteract with independent media. That means talking to independent journalists, not just in addition to you and Doctor and Doc and the good doctor here, but also working with even international media, because we've been published in Latin media, like in Spain, we've been published. Even NPR did an article on our struggle, which has really helped get the desecration of Black cemeteries into like the national discussion. And so that's one thing. The other thing that we do is that we build community power. Going back to Cabral, he said, like, what we're going to do is that we're going to tell the truth. We're not going to tell any lies. We're going to expose any and all lies when they are told. And we are going to claim no easy victories. In fact, even on the legal front, it wasn't an easy victory, because again, our lawsuit was with HOC on the HOC side of things. HOC, when we first took them to court at the circuit court level, they were trying to rehash the same old lies, right, in front of the judge. They're saying, oh, it's not really a cemetery. They're being delusional. They don't have any records. And yet here we are. Our attorneys, to their credit, produced church records showing burials taking place in Moses. They showed historians and archaeologists that have done surveys. They may not be able to do a full archaeological survey, but they've been able to say, yes, their body's still there. And then they even took HOC's own words, because a lot of their meetings are recorded, where they're acknowledging Moses Cemetery is in that area. So, the judge ruled in our favor at the circuit court. HOC then went to the appellate court, and they tried to say, they didn't change their argument, but they tried to say, like, it's really the wording of the law. Like, instead of saying the court shall, it's the court may intervene. And so the appeals court, while they ruled in favor of HOC because of that, they did say, like, we could we could appeal to the Supreme Court, which we did. And the Supreme Court said, we'll hear your case. And so, again, at the Supreme Court case, HOC kept on trying to rehash their arguments that didn't hold weight at the circuit court. And then one of the justices at the Maryland Supreme Court said, you said desecration happened back in the 60s and isn't happening now, but let me ask you this question. Are cars still being parked in that part of the cemetery? And they said, yeah. So then they said, well, wouldn't you consider parking cars to be a form of desecration? And they said, well, it could be considered desecration. Then the justice was like, so you agree there's still desecration going on by your own admission, that there's still desecration going on? And then the lawyer for HOC couldn't really respond to that, so, and it really, it kind of confirms something that I think we already know, is that idiots in power are dangerous. And then when they get exposed, it really should be used as a community education moment to be like, hey, they're not invincible. They're not all knowing. In fact, a lot of times they're full of it. And so what we have to do, as we have to continue exposing the lies, we have to continue to build, community power. And we also need to make sure that we get people that once the liberation movement comes into power, that they don't just become as corrupt as the people that are in power. So that's just like, so it's a bit of a process, I know, but it can be done. It has been done. It's been done in our lifetime. So.
Well, I thank you for that. A couple of things that have come up in the chat. Leah asks what I assume that's Montgomery, NCPPC has or has not done. Do you have, I don't know, I'm not even sure like who they are. So
okay, absolutely. So the Maryland National Commission of Parks and Planning Commission, it's a bi-county, so it's overseen by both Montgomery and Prince George's. The long answer to that, the long and short of it is, they've done nothing. They have refused to basically, issue a statement. They've even refused, and I need to provide some context because this involves the part of the cemetery that's currently overseen by the private developer. So when the private developer began digging up 242, they were finding all sorts of funerary items, such as tombstones. They found wooden coffin lids. They even were finding bones. And so what the developer did was that they tried to test the bones. They sent them to, and even though we told them about Dr. Michael Blakey, who's been working with us for the past several years, who was willing to test them and even set up his lab and got a team together, they sent them to a forensic specialist up at Towson University, and the Dr. Dana Coleman, and she specializes in being able to identify whether bones are animal or human. And she says, I don't know, and further testing needs to be done. And at the time, further testing wasn't done. And so we tried to reach out to the MNC PPC, basically because they're the ones that get, because the planning board reports to the MNC PPC to basically, would you be willing to release the bones so they can be independently tested? And they refuse to do so. And so that's the long and short of it. They've done nothing. They've been just as complicit.
Of course they have. I don't know why I didn't actually expect a different answer, but so frustrating. So another question, well, it's not really a question, it's just, and you sent us so many links and I didn't see a link to a book. And I'm like, wait, there's a book. So
okay, so yeah. So there's like, so we've written a few books. They're in PDF. And there's one. So I gotta provide context. We've done 2 exhibits at American University. The first exhibit we did back in 2019 was called Plans to Prosper You, which talked about some of the local Black communities in the Potomac Valley of Montgomery County. So that's River Road, Tobytown, and the Scotland community. We did another one in 2022 called The Bridge That Carried Us Over, which talks specifically about the history of River Road community and the Battle of Moses Macedonia Cemetery. We should still have several copies of the books. If anyone's interested in ordering, like, please let me know. I'll definitely forward that information.
Hello.
I want one. Don't worry.
I'll send you a note. No, I might actually be down there soon, so we'll figure this out. We'll figure it out. But I definitely would like to read that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll coordinate. We'll definitely coordinate.
And we also have a few folks who are mad they can't find you on the socials. So,
okay, no problem. So our social media, we're Facebook, we're active on Facebook, Twitter, and IG. Our Twitter and IG handles are the same. I'm gonna put it in it's at hold on for a second. It's at BETHAFR Cemetery. That's our Twitter and IG handle. It's basically the same. And then our Facebook page is Save Bethesda Moses Cemetery. That's our Facebook page. We are also are expanding the Blue Sky. I'll let you all know what our handle is going to be for when we get set up on Blue Sky. And our website is Bethesda African Cemetery site.wordpress.com. I also put that link in the chat, so Sister Renee and Dr. Ball, you can put that in the
and please call me Jared. Please call me Jared.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
In the chat, and the link is in the chat.
Oh, okay, great, awesome. Thank you so much, brother Jared. I appreciate you.
There we go. That's better. There we
go. So is there, we're probably about getting to an hour marker. Is there anything else? Well, before we even get there, can you talk about what we here at Black Liberation, with the audience, with the wider, whoever watches this, what can we do to support what you all are doing?
Okay, sure, absolutely. So there's several things. Definitely, please spread please spread this around to your networks. That's definitely like one of the best things to do. Follow us on social media, because that's a way to help to keep abreast of what's going on and how you can get involved that way. There's also our website. You can sign up, you can subscribe, you can get updates that way in terms of upcoming rallies, new member orientations. We even have a newsletter called the Bulletin, so you be able to read what we publish over there. There's also, if you're in the area, if you're able to come to attend our rallies and protests, please come. We have them every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And we're also having a new member orientation. We have new member orientations once a month. Matter of fact, we're having another one this upcoming Thursday, the 20th at 6 o'clock. If anyone is interested, please let me know, and I will definitely forward that information to both you and Renette and Jared. And the other thing, and I really hate asking for this, but unfortunately, circumstances say that I have to, is that if you're able to donate, because unfortunately movements cost money. But if you're able to donate, and I want to be very clear, your donations help us go towards political education, making signs for our protests and rallies, as well as we also have a Juneteenth celebration. So being able to help, pay for food and pay for musicians and poets to come, and as well as being able to help us sustain the movement, so we can continue to fight the fight until the land is returned to us. So if you're able to donate, no amount is too small. If you're only able to donate $2, that's fine. If you're able to donate $5, that's fine. Donate what you can, and more importantly, I would say just get involved. And one way you can get involved, for whoever's watching, there's descendant communities, Black cemeteries that are being desecrated all over this country. And so if there's a descendant community like where you're at, get involved in that, because getting involved with that descendant community, whether it's in Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, California, wherever in the United States that you are, even, I want to be very clear, it's not even a national, it's an international issue the issue of Black cemeteries being desecrated, because it's happening in the Caribbean, it's happening in Latin America, and unfortunately it's happening in Africa. But if you're able to get involved, that's another way you're helping out BACC, because you're advancing the cause of land justice. So those are just some things that everyone can do.
Is there, to your knowledge, Rob, as you just said that, is there like a list somewhere of the current struggles that are happening, whether nationally, internationally, whatever, so that folks can kind of go to like a list and figure out like where are these battles happening exactly, and what's the closest one to me?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. So we work with this college professor in Florida. She established the Black Cemetery Network. So you can actually hold on. Let me go ahead and pull up that link. I actually have it saved in my favorites. Give me 1 second. I want to put that in there. And the Black Cemetery Network actually has like a link of where you can explore and find where like these where they are. And basically you can go and look, you can find where, and they list by state as well. So if you live, say, in Groveland, Florida, well, there is the Groveland Cemetery that's fighting for recognition. You have, even in DC, you have 4, in addition to Black Georgetown, you have the Woodlawn Collaborative Committee. You also have the DC Broad Branch Project. So just to name a few. And then you also have Brown Grove in Virginia, which is more so like close to the Virginia-North Carolina border. But you can get involved in there. So you can just like look on the Black Cemetery Network website, just put the link for you all. And that's how you can figure out which one's going on near you and who to reach out to get involved that way.
Perfect. I'm gonna grab that out the chat and drop it in so folks can see, because that's a big one. That's massive. And these are the things that always get me going. Is like, how do I figure out where? Because I know I'm about to be pissed off when I when I go.
And there's even a couple up north that have been that are currently fighting. There's one up in Brooklyn, the Flatbush African Burial Ground Coalition.
Yes, I did see that in one of the articles you sent. Yeah.
Yes, because the thing is, what a lot of people don't even know is that New York City was one of the largest slave trading ports
Right.
in Brooklyn specifically. In fact, it's been documented, like, the Flatbush African Cemetery, has been, there have been people that were taking bones out of that cemetery, while talking with members of that coalition up until the early 1900s. They were still finding bones, and they were building a lot of the tenements and apartments that in Brooklyn, on top of it. So
I need to learn more about that. I grew up in Flatbush, and so I'm like, I need more. I gotta find out more about this, because that's exactly, we went from East Flatbush to Flatbush. Like, that is literally where I spent my entire childhood. So I need to figure more out about that. So thank you. Is there anything that we missed? Jared, did we not cover anything that was on your list? Is there anything
No,
else
we
you want
got
to
we got
share?
everything that I would have wanted to bring up, and I'm grateful for the discussion, and thank you for the work and
thank
the
you.
framing of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Just thank you both for having me. I really appreciate the work that you all do. The work that, like I said before, the work that you do both for Black Liberation Media and even in the streets, like being able to organize. One of the things that Chairman O'Malley, who himself supports BACC, often says, oftentimes, that your victory in the court will be determined by your victory in the streets. And he's a living embodiment of that, because recently, the Uhuru 3 were able to not serve any jail time, like with their victory, because they protested, they organized. And that's something that we all have to remember, is that when we organize and when we fight and when we struggle, we win. Yes, you may not win every battle, but we can still win the war. And within the context of Black Cemeteries, one of our battle cries for Moses and is, it's destroyed today, but it will be returned tomorrow. So always remember that.
All right. Thank you so very much, Robert, for joining. Please, let's stay in touch.
Yes.
Once I make sure I get my book into, so we can keep in touch with like what's all happening and any updates. And especially as these court cases keep moving along down the pike. And if there's anything we can do, if something's going on and you want us to highlight it, like, we're here. You're always welcome. Just send a note. We got you.
Awesome. Thank you. I definitely will. I'll definitely be keeping you all updated with what's going on and how you can highlight and spread the word.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Right
Rob.
on. Thanks a lot. Take good care. Peace.
Take care of yourselves. Uhuru.
You too. All right. That was dope.
That was dope.
So,
Robert had a lot of history up in that dome, man. He walked us through literally decades of information. Decades, just like, yeah, this is what happened.
So what I'll do is just to play him out, and then play Nietzsche in, just to keep it going. Welcome.
Yo. I was in and out, so that was good stuff. That was a good dialogue. Appreciate that.
Good. I'm glad you were able to listen in. We I don't know. I have such a struggle with like wanting to say things like, I just don't even understand, like, why, like, how can you not care about the bodies, right? And then having to remind myself consistently, like, it's Black people. That's why they don't care about the bodies. Like, duh. So, like, I don't know, man. It's a struggle. But I am about to go into I'm about to fall down a rabbit hole with this whole Flatbush cemetery, because I'm like, wait, what? So and somebody put in the chat that it's Bedford Avenue, and so that's literally like right by where I grew up. So I gotta figure this out.
You know what I was thinking in my good brain yesterday?
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know. Because of your research, and because somebody just posted something about I don't remember the black billionaire who did franchise. I feel like this crew can finish my project of Where Are They Now? Blueprint for Black Power. We only did 3 episodes, but your research will allow us to go even deeper. So I don't know if I can put too many tasks on us, but I think that would be a dope project. It will help us go over that policy formation chapter like we talked about in Blueprint for Black Power, but to extend that, that would be a good exercise.
I think the same thing should be done with, or a similar approach should be brought to Professor Nemhard's work on cooperatives.
Listen, I'm with it.
And see and again, it's not to speak ill of their effort. It's to make the point about the limitations imposed. That's for me the issue. So yeah.
Look, I mean, it's not like you don't have my number, so you know that you got to send me the episodes that exist, so I know like where we're starting from.
Yeah, I'd like to get it. I'd like to revisit it too, just to get it.
I'm down. I'm
Okay.
down. Look, you know me. I get pushed down rabbit holes literally like every other. Y'all have no idea how much time I spend like literally just following the path of some random shit I came across, trying to see if I can understand it. And that's why I get so frustrated. Like when we're going back and forth about all this stuff with like the Bitcoin. And that's why I get so annoyed, because I'm not stupid, right? Like I might not be whatever people consider genius level or whatever, but I'm not stupid. And if something makes sense, it will make sense to me because I'm not stupid. So if some shit don't make sense, I'm like, it's not me.
Right? But I think anybody who's not, severely cognitively debilitated should be able to understand the economy of any country. If it's being honest, I don't think it needs to be this complicated. I think it's the complication, the language is they do that on purpose to hide the Ponzi.
Yeah.
So that's
and
that's
that's
then they
what you
want
said
us
that
to
day.
feel
You were
stupid.
like, yeah, they were like, it's intentional, right?
And then I mean that's why when and then when smart people like Professor Hillary Allen, as she said, look into it, it's really nothing there. It just takes people with some training and time and resources to do the investigation, and everybody who does it comes back with the same thing. There's nothing there. And then
I can't wait for her to release that book.
Oh man.
And I'm so excited. She was like, I'm just gonna drop it into the ether as a PDF. I was like, what? Let's go.
I honestly don't remember how much she said in the show, but a little bit I know was discussed off record. And I don't think it's a problem for me to she did not, the reception in the publishing industry was not there.
No, because they're not publishing that. They are not publishing that. And now when she releases it in PDF and it gets the reads, right? So I suspect like with your book, when you initially did the mythology book, right? The thought process is like, well, he's a professor. He knows what he's talking about. We'll publish it. But they weren't really expecting people to read it. So once they realized that people were actually going to pay attention, well, now we can sell it because people will buy, you know what I mean? Like,
but I also don't think that, but again, well, hers is, but I would also, to be fair, I think hers is a more aggressive critique than mine. Like, I don't think it's like I think the Buying Power book is a politically soft book. It's not saying overtly that anyway. I think she's more overtly aggressive and hostile to the crypto industry, and because she has all of the bona fides and all of the credentials and all of the, I think that's what I think made it worse for her. I think in some ways, kind of what has happened to me is like it's not a wildly radical argument, and again, I'm just saying, like, I don't have the credentials that she has, so her having that and the more aggressive argument, because I've read a good portion of the book, and it's not a revolutionary book, don't get me wrong, but she's just more aggressive at calling out the industry, and it's
Well,
so anyway, I could see
I'm
why
looking
people would
forward
be
to
like,
it,
I'm
but-
not trying to deal with this. I'm not.
I mean, I think
Especially right now when
Right.
everybody's trying, when the president is running a Ponzi scheme and his wife are running the Ponzi scheme with the coins.
Wild.
It's like,
It's
you know,
wild.
I think
I don't know
think
which professor this person's talking
Allen.
about.
I'm
Oh.
assuming Hillary Allen
Oh.
with one L in Hillary, if that's who you're asking me about. She's at
Okay.
Hopkins, and you see, just look. I mean, her resume is kind of like, damn, man. It's like if y'all not gonna listen to her, I mean, it's
Jerry, I think your book is aggressively removing the ineffective stopgap that we have been pursuing for our political and economic, political issues, and that's why the response to it is so like this little cardboard is not working. You pull the shit out the way, and now everybody ready to fight.
So two things. One, I understand your point, Geechee, and I hear you, and I'm not at all trying to take away from my effort. But and yeah, Jessica Gordon Nemhard is yes, that was the other professor, and there's a B in it's Nembhard.
I actually got her coming to this resistant bill conference thing we got coming in Atlanta.
Good.
Yeah,
Nice.
but those conversations does have to happen.
We shared workspace at one point. I always liked her. I thought we had a good relationship. It's all good. I have slight disagreements with some of her work, and that's it, and that's that. So, but I think she's dope. She did a lot of good work on Du Bois as well, and yeah, so good.
Well, since we brought up the book,
We ain't the only ones. Somebody
you like that segue?
That was
since
good.
you
That
brought
was
up
slick.
the book.
That was good.
So Geechee is here because, as happens often on our chats, we ended up down a little bit of a, oh, do I have to watch this? And so Jared, as Jared often does, Jared is the best at finding himself in other people's spaces. I don't know how you do it. It's great.
So two things, just quickly. Two things. I do have Google alert set on my name, so I do want to know if somebody is saying my name. I want to know about it. But this is, as is usually the case, was sent to me via Twitter, and that's how I saw it. And they said, they talking about your book, and that is, I admit, it's a good way to get my attention. I
got a better way, but let me pretext this.
Phrasing.
Oh,
Jared said, "Keep his name out your mouth."
No, I didn't. No, that's not what I'm saying. I said the opposite. I'm saying speak my name. Phrasing. Speak my name. And I want to know about it when it happens. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying talk more. Google alerts to the boss. That's it. I want to know. So
now I want to drop, and I almost hate to say it out loud, but I feel like it would be so funny if you had a Destiny's Child drop of "Say My Name" whenever.
AI.
No. It wouldn't be Destiny's Child. You know what it would be? It would be I would sample the true hateful use of that when in the track "Oh No," Mos Def, as he was known at the time, opened his verse by saying, "Say my name, because he was letting everybody he was reminding you. I was there. I was once. Hi, remember me? Because we was in that movie Carmen together. Remember? So I was like, I said, Mos, you dirty. And people said, Renee, you might have heard rumors of this once upon a time, the joke used to be, what, 1 in 6 black children in Brooklyn is most deaths. He's like he populated half of the city.
He went to the continent, left them all here.
But that would be what I would sample for that. Say my name, say my that
All
version.
right, so there you go. So that's got to be. You're gonna have to work on that because I think that'll be
all
a
right.
good
That
one.
next, yeah.
So for those, since we just started talking, I gave no context and I apologize. So on Olay's latest Olay and Friends, they were having a conversation about the boycotts and whether or not the boycotts are a reasonable response to what's happening. And so we caught wind of the conversation. And I initially was not going to watch this. And all due respect to Olay, I do personally love her. I just sometimes anything about like the politics stuff, I get very like thrown off, but sometimes by just the context of what they discuss. So, but I did endure, and I watched it on time, and I watched it on double time actually. And I actually read the closed caption more than I actually watched because that just made it even faster. But you did come up, and they said your name very clearly, Dr. Ball. They named the book. Somebody said they were going to get the book because they were excited to read the book. Look, I'm
interesting.
Here for it.
Somebody, he's interesting. I would be interested to see what he do with that book.
I had actually seen 1 or 2 of his videos too, and
he's different.
It could go a couple ways. It could go a couple of ways, but I will say also that because I also watched at advanced speed, but I did watch that especially what Deshaun says here to open up the video and other comments and questions raised beyond just discussion of my work, I thought was actually pretty good and interesting. I was admittedly somewhat pleasantly surprised because you know, as I admit, you know, I often, you know, I'm
But this particular situation,
always like ready.
Wait, the other, I don't know if Manny is correct. Money is correct, and so we're talking about another person, not Deshaun when we said he, and I'm not sure if the other.
Oh, right.
So I wasn't referencing Deshaun at all. Right.
Yeah,
no,
it's
that
another
wasn't
guy.
Deshaun. It's
I don't
another.
even. Yeah, I'm not even sure if that person goes by they, but I thought.
But just to be clear, we weren't talking about Deshaun.
Yeah.
As he, correct.
Garrison. Yeah.
Garrison, yes, and I understood Garrison to.
I believe
let me
his
just be
says
quiet.
he. Yeah, I'm
that's what I thought.
certain it says
but,
he. Yeah.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
We'll see in a minute, maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I'll play and I hope it's as now because I haven't seen it in real time. I don't. But I think the point that I was interested in is made very quickly here at the beginning.
Being a little controversial. You know, I've been seeing the boycotts, and I think I have a lot of questions. I think I have a lot of questions, and I also wonder if I'm not sure if we're serious, okay? And the reason why I'm saying this is because I did not know that we were still taking anything that Jamal Bryant or Al Sharpton were offering serious. I just didn't realize that was the case. Some people are, and hey, that's their prerogative. But what I also think is true is like major corporations of today do not function in the way that they did in the 60s, right? That has been true since the 80s, at least. And so for me, I'm like, you know, a 1-day boycott or even a 40-day boycott does not actually effectively do anything financially to the corporation. Now, I do think that.
All right. So that for me was the point that I was happy to see
100%
laid out from the beginning. And I do like that that we collectively take some credit for spreading the Bryant
I mean, listen, look, we've been saying this since these damn Target boycotts started. Like,
No, the
I
hate on
can't.
Bryant goes back a minute around here.
Well,
yes,
fair enough.
Yeah, that's what I'm
But
saying.
it's
Like
just,
collectively, it's been
yeah, and it's just, to me, I appreciate someone else just being like, "What is we doing? Like, what's happening right now?" Because it is absurd. It is absurd. And now I keep seeing like these little reels of people like dancing in front of Costco, or like talking about how many billions Target has lost, and it's because of the boycott. And they haven't even taken a moment to like backtrack and actually find the article that explains that those billions were lost last November, like in fourth quarter of 2024, and have nothing to do with the boycotts, right? And so I was very appreciative of the way they started this entire thing. And I'm also very appreciative of people who say things like, I'm going to be controversial and that's okay. Like, please do be controversial. I appreciate it.
So I agree.
Yeah,
I
go
agree
ahead.
When Deshaun came out and nicely said, because I thought they could have done. I thought they were intending to be more aggressive, but the serious part, like I'm glad that that's what they said at the beginning. Like, are we really serious? But two, like, as y'all said, Bryant was a political science major, right? Although he come up as a pastor, and for him to go from PE to BS, like his whole entrance into social justice, as they claim, is literally, as he says, financial literacy, economic empowerment, and whatever. And none of those things have ever been scalable and or beneficial to anybody other than himself and maybe a couple of his passing pawns. But I think at this point, the Pastor Griff, his shit should be over at this point. Even coming to Atlanta now, that shit should be over at this point. So I would agree, starting off with there.
Yeah, it's wild. Are we gonna play the where they actually say Jared?
Oh yeah. I was just starting with that. I don't know if how many of the clips that you all wanted to make sure we got to. I just wanted to.
I have my notes.
Order.
I have my notes. I have no clips. We're gonna go with what you go with, and then because I don't need people to watch anything. I can make my commentary as we go.
I think is important to talk about here, and I'm going to be quiet in a minute because I know Leslie's going to have a lot to say. But what I also think is true is that a big part of this is that people are still buying into the myth of Black buying power, and that feels incredibly frustrating for me to witness, because if Black people could have bought ourselves to freedom, we would have done so by now. A big part of the reason why we can't is because we know how capitalism works. We know how anti-Blackness works, right? Our money, quite frankly, does not have the same value, nor do we have the same level of access to that money as our counterparts. So when I hear you mention, that we're living in the age of people who have used these same tactics to help create policies to draw back some of the progressive stances that companies have made. My response to that is that is exactly what neoliberalism is. That's exactly what financialization is that it allows for wealthy elites and for conservatives more largely to use their voice and their power, because they quite frankly do have more of it than we do.
So that the only issue that I had with that was I don't agree that we properly understand capitalism and anti-Blackness. And I think that so much of I think those concepts are often referenced and sometimes, in some way discussed, but I think the discussion is often captured by forms of liberalism reactionary narrowness, etc. We don't actually, I think, have a proper. And that to me has become abundant, maybe more clear than I would have expected, just as a response to my own argument. So just seeing the response and feeling in some cases the response has been like, damn, I really don't think so. Anyway, but that was the first reference there.
Right.
The
big that was, and then I mean, he actually says, that I feel like that's pretty helpful when they actually say like the book, right? Like Garrison says it, right? Like they actually say the book.
They come back and actually say it too. I was just again kind of going in order of but yeah. And then this is the full crew for folks to see. So, and I'll make sure the link is in the show description if folks want to watch the whole video to make sure we don't, I actually think their whole discussion is of value. I'm not mad at the discussion. But just to make sure if anybody wants to, clarify that nothing is taken out of context, et cetera, and so forth. But the part here that I had highlighted or meant to highlight is an error. Timothy here in the middle here, actually, I don't think you see my cursor.
But actually, Monty, real quick, that's the person we was actually talking about.
That's
who we was talking about. That's we kept saying he doesn't. That's him.
Yeah.
But if you would say another word or two, why you think?
Yeah, let's get it.
But
can we now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Are you planning on playing where he responds about saying he's gonna, because there's something he says that I thought was really interesting. I
actually have. Let's see. So after, because I'm going in order. The Garrison comment comes next, and then we can play as much of that as you want. I did just want to play quickly why I'm glad on some level my book comes up, and I hope that folks take it. But if I catch this part here, Timothy says something that I think is important here.
So I am going to have to leave shortly. But Ole, as always, the great conversation, needed conversation. Thanks for having me be a part.
Of course. Bye, Cream.
All of this. And I'm sorry for the delay. I'm outside, and so we've got some weather issues. That's why I'm having some delay with the internet. But it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, bye.
Oh, wait a minute. I missed his. Oh, wait. It must have been before that.
So that has never been policy, but I think it must begin with a communal understanding that we have to work together, beginning at the local level. And I think that's where this conversation begins and ends, just in that we have to find a way of understanding that my existence is predicated upon yours, and how we leverage our buying power, how we leverage our place in the community is important. I'm getting ready to take my son to the doctor. My children have a Black doctor. So do I. When I sold my home, my real estate agent was Black. As often as I can, I support Black businesses for the basic needs of my home. When I can't find a Black business that supports that or provides that good or service, I find a company that treats Black people well. Just the whole motif from bygone era, don't shop.
So, wait, there it is.
Shop where you can't be hired type of idea.
Don't shop where you can't be hired. So sorry, I thought that was important because he's doing sort of the blueprint kind of response to my argument that often ignores my argument. I know he wasn't, he didn't claim to be engaging at that point, but I think it was important because don't buy where you can't work is literally what Abram Harris was calling out 100 years ago as a failed approach. And then working from there to explain why that doesn't help. So when he's even saying at the beginning of that comment, the way we use our buying power, he's already beginning with the false premise that such exists in the way that he thinks. So that's
why. Can you let it play a little longer? Because it's actually the next thing he says is the thing that I have written down.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I agree that policy can't be our end all be all goal, but we still have to advocate at a broader level for some semblance of equality. And that's ultimately how we've gotten advancement so far, whether it's the Reconstruction Amendments, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, whatever you may look at the national level, that came as the hallmark of organizing that looked at what are the obstacles that are preventing us from being able to advance as a people. And so those things need to be front of mind as we're moving and navigating throughout society. And these things that placate to our various desires, things like DEI or affirmative action, they become ineffective in part because the goalposts keep moving and they're not allowed to achieve the fullness of whatever their stated purpose is.
Right.
So the problem is that the goalposts are moving. I'm sorry. First of all, I don't know if I fully understood anything that he just said. Like
him neither.
Yeah, it was again a lot. That's why I was saying like a lot of that is kind of it's almost like it's like a visceral knee-jerk response.
Wait. He an artist? He's a musical artist?
I don't know anything. The shirt, I gotta say, the shirt threw me off, and so I was like, I had to go back and like read what he said because I was like, what? Wait,
whose shirt? Who are we talking about?
Timothy.
Timothy. So yeah, I don't know anything.
I just don't really. But I am incensed by people who believe that these programs that get put in place are things that are actually, serving a real purpose. And the reason they don't work is because the goalposts are moving. And I'm not really sure what goalposts he thinks are moving that are creating a problem with the DEI, why we can't get freedom. Like it was all just too much for me. But I wrote it down because I was like, advancement and movement goalposts and DEI? What? That's literally what I wrote down.
DEI is the moved goalpost. Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So this is where Garrison mentions anyway.
People in very anti-Black ways. I'm very aware of that, but I'm curious about the other numbers. And so like, I'm just going to say that. I want to kind of like hold space, you know what I'm saying, for a couple of things.
He says it before this. Are you talking about where he says your look?
Yeah. I thought,
and there's because I don't
keep us stuck right here too.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was going to kind of comment earlier on something that Ole said, which is this idea of like not really knowing. Like I genuinely am so excited to get the myth and propaganda of Black buying power. Like I'm genuinely excited for this book because I don't really know where they're going to come from. I do know that this idea of where you spend your money has been weaponized against Black people in very anti-Black ways. I'm very aware of that, but I'm curious about the other numbers. And so like, I'm just going to say that.
So that was so good. And Garrison, I hope, does and checks and is
I want a note to you when it's read. That's what I want. I want you to get a note that says I read your book.
I appreciate that I honestly don't need a note. I just want him to loudly talk about what his findings are. That's all.
But see, the problem is, this is why you need the note, because he could do that without reading the book.
Well,
right?
Okay,
like he could watch a whole bunch of videos about people complaining about your book, never read your book, and be completely on the wrong side of understanding what your book is actually about.
No,
so
I think he would read it. I'm
hoping
he would. He would read it. He just would probably come to all the wrong conclusions and argue points that you didn't say. But I don't know to do well, but I do know all the video I've seen, he positioned himself like a lightweight FD who apparently does more reading. So it would be weird if you don't read the book.
If he read, if he does, I want the actual read, and then whatever he thinks about it, I want him to say loudly. That would be good with me, even if he's wrong. I'm good. I would. I want, but just be on camera and mic and do get the production team out, because I've seen some of his videos. Get the
So
editors together.
I've never seen him until I was forced to. So this is part of the problem, is I just can't sometimes with like the influencers on YouTube. I really have a hard time. I just can't do it. But he also, so before this, and you don't have to go back because we don't need to watch it, him saying it out loud, but he talks about like the people who are involved in the conversation. And so even what he goes into after this, where he's talking about holding space for these things, his purview is an interesting one, because he's not 100% wrong in some of the things he says, but he's also like clearly coming from sorry. I don't know why you did that to me. So, but he's also like, his purview is clearly from like a whole different place, but he keeps saying this thing about like, you know, who's in the conversation, and you know, them being in a conversation, but not everybody being in their conversation. And then he talks about things, and I'm like, well, I don't really want a whole lot of Black people in your conversation, because I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't even understand how you got to this place. So it's interesting. He's interesting, but I mean, I'd like to know what he thinks about your book. I really would, and I'd like us to try and find Deshaun, because I'd like them to come on if we can make that happen, because I feel like that might be a really good conversation. Why are you making it? No, Geechee.
Well, no, I don't. No, I'm speculating. No, but Deshaun was on a couple times, and they had a show with Joy James on. Well,
oh, okay, all right, that just answered the question. So, okay, all right,
but we still can reach out.
Anywho, so was there another? And I lied. I did have a clip that I wanted us to play.
I got a couple more.
We could talk right after this. So it's my timestamp that I wanted to re-listen to.
Where?
It's at 1:01:53. So you know, an hour and 1 minute and 53.
1 hour and 1 minute.
Wait, did they actually say your name? Because I didn't see the name part.
Whose name?
Deshaun said my name at one point, and then and I think even more than once.
Twice, in fact.
Yeah. They said my name a couple of times, and actually in very laudatory ways. Like they were appreciative, and I appreciate what they said. They were saying that, like, I forgot the exact language, but it was that it's a good book and this, that, and the third. So it was some nice. The only other part that I quickly passed over there from Garrison is Garrison also brought up some sort of reference to John Hope Bryant, but that was it. So, all right. So is this? We ready for this part here?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Who felt discouraged and dejected and dropped in the middle of nowhere after they felt as though they were taking good, solid collective action with other people. And so that's where I just, for me as an organizer, that's the thing that I always come back to, is in digital spaces. Like, if we don't have an online to offline ramp, and we don't have an absorption plan, we're missing the how piece. And we're really leaving a lot of folks out there that we need in this fight with us.
Yeah.
I think a kind of final culmination.
You can stop it now. It was more. It was mostly about that idea of like, you bring people in with something like this, right? Or a petition or a protest or a rally or whatever have you. And then you don't really have a means to, especially with things like, we're going to boycott Target for 40 days, right? Like, you really don't have a means to engage and continue moving, right? And so people get like lost, right? So you may have a lot of people who, who are willing to do some work and who are willing to engage in certain ways, but as time goes and after you get past that one thing that you did, if you're not really organizing to keep people involved in the work, then where are we going from there? And I like the conversation about the the on ramp and the off ramp. I thought that was a really good way to explain how how this works in organizing spaces, right? Like you have these on ramps because it's something they're talking about, right? Like these on ramps of bringing people in, but then she said like, and then they fall off a cliff, right? And so I was like, okay, got it.
So Deshaun is a vetted scholar, intellectual, and I think if not organizing, has chops on the ground. I don't know where the person in the top right, where they organize with, and then the person in the bottom right, some of their answers was kind of weird. But I do see that there's often an effort to, at least on Ole's part, to keep particular type of organizations and particular type of politics off that platform, which is kind of surprising that Deshaun is on there. But yeah, I am curious too what this offline, get offline and into organization or into the streets. I'm curious what organization the person in the top right actually is with.
Oh, my bad. I didn't mean to switch it out before you made the reference. But,
oh yeah.
But
you're good.
I'll be curious.
Just real quick, check.
You know what I mean? So I was like, and like I said, there isn't on the internet, unfortunately, not necessarily the internet, because this is a space we created, but like on social media platforms, there is people do not want you to ask questions. They don't want you to be trying to get a greater understanding or to like express like a query or concern. It's a fight. You know what I mean? Like once you say, if I had said it, well, this seems good. I don't think you're defending. That's how that would have been. Like that would have just been conflated to you're defending capitalists or something like that. You defended having when it really is just like I'm confused because I think y'all are confused. I'm not sure you're telling me. You know what I mean? So I think that's my problem is I'm all for whatever. You know what I mean? Like especially with things that I don't think are particularly difficult. You know what I mean to do, right? Which I'm not saying for everybody it's different. Like some people can't shop, they need to shop here. Some people need to do this on all kinds of different reasons. But things for me personally that might not like. I could go with Target before I could lose Amazon. You know what I'm saying? Like,
all right, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Somewhere in here, I thought I had it clipped where she says something critical about Black capitalism. Now I'm going to see if I can find the transcript.
Yeah, when you said it, I couldn't find that.
You couldn't find that?
No, when you did that timestamp, I didn't see it.
You also have this back up on the screen. You
I know.
to look at it on this. Okay, as long
Yeah.
as just making sure.
Yeah.
But I think kind of to
where
her.
is that? Where is that reference then? Where is this showing up?
I don't know. Oh, you actually can do the command search joint, but I don't know if she used Black capitalism word.
I could have sworn she did. No.
I ain't heard. But to her point about questioning, the other person was saying too around questioning
did I hear?
and being contrarian to what's being said. And she was like, we're not asking you about your motives or your intelligence. And I'm like, well, no, you should probably ask people about their motives, their goals, and at least their competence on a particular subject or field. If not, we'll just be having everybody talking about anything and having no point of reference. So this idea of all opinions and all perspectives are welcome, that has limitations because if you're just sharing around myths or inaccurate information, that's a waste of time.
I'm glad I checked my work. I'm glad I checked my work because I did not. Yeah, I guess I must have misheard that then. Why did I write that down? What I said? I
mean, somebody in the chat said it was capitalism. Said. No.
Yeah, I could have sworn she said she had like a negative. Yeah, she had like a critique of. But anyway, so what? But given what you were just saying, though, Geechee, this could be it could be that she did, and that you're right, that if she is mentioning black capitalism, but and seeming to criticize it, but in a way that is framed to limit actual critique of it, then it could be a problem. It could be even more of a problem in some ways. So, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
So the conversation was interesting in general. Just in general, it was an interesting conversation. I appreciated. I admittedly I don't watch a lot of these, so I don't know if this is like a commonplace thing that Ole does now, because it seemed that there were people on who were really pushing back. Like it was actually a debate between people, and like Deshaun saying like, I just don't agree with that, right? Like I just think that's incorrect. And so for me, like that part of it is important to have that back and forth with people who have not the same view on these things. But for me, after watching it, I really wish there could be more engagement on these larger channels in real ways with people who are more like Deshaun was during this conversation, right? Like more like the sister was, who was like, look, I'm an organizer, right? Like sometimes I feel like these conversations get lost amongst people who are not actually organizers, but often have a whole lot to say about what organizers are doing. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not like I'm not watching FD's video. Like I scrolled through it to see what Ricky said, just because I was like, I just wanted to hear her parts. And then that was it. Like that's all that video is getting from me, right? Like I can't do especially after I found out per Geechee that the title got changed, and like he was literally like, oh, it was because of the algorithm. I had to change the title, right? Like
now he has done that. I mean, he's even talked about it, and there are even videos that advocate that that's how you should make those adjustments if you're trying to capture the algorithm. Change your thumbnail, change the title of your video, do things like that. So I can at least say that that this is not something that is new to this exact program. That he has done this for a while. But
so I thought both. There were two people who said they was going to read
the
your
video.
book.
I will say that I haven't seen the video.
There was two people who said they was going to read your book. So the one guy, and then the Afroecology rapper, I think he said the two before he left. Didn't he say he want to check that book out before he left?
I don't remember that part.
I'm pretty sure he said that too.
I thought he said something vaguely suggesting interest, but that was about it. I do want to say the only other thing that I wanted to mention, because I know I have to leave for my Columbia Association Board Kingmaker meeting. But the only other piece that I wanted to reference was that Deshaun does at one point in the video bring up something that I thought was very interesting, which was that there needs to be more willingness to criticize these more recent movements. And they said something like, we're always happy to go back to the 60s and 70s and criticize what they didn't do or did and whatever, but not enough focus has been brought to the more recent efforts. And I was like, that was no.
Deshaun, he not being invited back. I'm sorry, they're not being invited back. That's a wrap.
Okay, I was like, okay, all right.
I doubt. I've never seen them on with Ole before, so I doubt that she done her research or kind of know Deshaun's politics. That's because as Renee, this is the first time. I don't watch a lot of these, but the ones that I've saw, this is the first time I did see like some more struggle and pushback, and like, no, I actually disagree with you, and then boom, laid it out. So maybe.
Has Deshaun ever been on as a solo guest on that show?
I've never
I don't.
seen.
Well, but A-Rob is saying that they've been on before with Ole. So I don't watch the show enough to know any information about that. So,
Oh, they
Yeah,
said
I
a few
thought.
times.
Look, I thought
Kamala crash
Deshaun.
out. Okay.
I thought Deshaun seemed. This is
I
the
I
first I've
agree.
heard from them, but I thought that they were dope, and I appreciate the shout out and reference.
Yeah, no, that's dope.
And I still feel like I know it sounds great. I heard somebody. Do you know? And this is a shout out to the show. By the way, my show Monday is going to be live. The live because we're on
What?
spring break. But I was looking at this Malcolm interview that I had never heard before, and Malcolm's in there, and I get how it sounds because even with Malcolm, I was thinking, oh man, this sounds so braggadocious. He was talking about his impact on the nation, and it was facts. It was all facts, but I was just like, ooh, this is just. So I get how it sounds, even from a legend. So when I say something like I'm still, as I'm aware, undefeated in someone actually reading the book and finding something that they really don't agree with or hate, and them saying so publicly. So the only negative criticisms I've ever seen or heard are from people who will also acknowledge they have not read the book, which I think is crazy. Because I think that there are things that I would be critical of if I read the book from a certain frame. So the idea that you could read it and not find something worthy of even positive, criticism is a little bit odd. But the idea that so many would have so much negative to say without reading it is wild. But that said, I'm gonna air this piece. We're gonna look at this Monday and see if people agree with me on that. Malcolm was like, wow, and I don't feel comfortable even being critical of him, but I was listening like, oh. But he was,
that's gotta be
it was
part,
a
but it's
call-in
gotta be
show. What it was call-in radio. That's what gets you.
always.
Calls on the
Always. Always.
And somebody called him up and said, whoop, 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 whoop. And he was like, what? And he responded. It was like, yeah, he was still human. He was still a man. He was great. But I was like, yeah, he was like, enough already. Y'all stop talking trash on my name.
That's hysterical. That's hysterical.
Yeah. Salute, though. Salute. Yeah, no one is perfect, Lead. I know. I wanted him to be. I've looked at him as in so many ways, and he wasn't. He wasn't. But again, his flaws are not what made him a target. So that's
So we got. I know you have to. We gotta make sure we end on time, not for anything else other than you have to.
No, I mean I'm still gonna stretch and hydrate. I'm just gonna be.
And I will make the note that the reading group on socialist reconstruction started last night, and that is a joint effort in New Jersey between PSL and the Green Party, which I will proudly brag that I am definitely at the core of, because it's something that I'm really, really working on doing work together. And I gotta find the chapters you covered, because I know for a little while you were doing.
I'm still doing it. So I've done 1 through 5. I have 6 ready to go. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And
so I gotta go back. Yeah. We did the intro chapters in chapter 1 last night, and I
think they did a great job.
Listen, and it sparked really good and there's like 40 something people doing this reading group, so
that's dope.
I'm here for it. Like I'm excited.
I would love to bring some of that discussion here. Like if we can start, if you want to start adding reviews or discussions of chapters to Saturdays, I'm down with that too.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
And
let's do it.
Yeah, that's right. If you're in New York,
right. If you're in New York, I'm actually out of town, so I'm signed up, but I'll have to watch the recording.
Damn, did she get a 1 p.m. slot? Did she get a 1 p.m. time slot? They got me at 6:30. Golly.
I know yours is late, man. That's gonna be rough because I'm gonna take the train in. So I gotta figure all that out.
So by the way, speaking of which, so the good news is my oldest is gonna be with me because of spring break. So she's coming with me. The only slight issue with that is your boy gonna have to, be a little bit more sober than planned in advance. This is gonna be a little.
Listen. We often will allow the 14-year-old to hang out in the hotel alone and relax.
Oh no! Because I want her to get the hate. The discussions.
Okay.
I want her there for the discussions. So it's all good. This
works out because I'm gonna have to take the train back to the car to drive back to the house, and so it's going. I gotta. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, but anyway, but
I'm gonna be there early.
Yeah.
Look, I told him too, man. They about to lock the doors. He announcing we all gonna be there. I'm like, don't tell him. They're like,
I'm going on a plant scavenger hunt.
It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a good time. And please definitely like, share, subscribe, everybody. Support the Patreon. There's a lot of good content there.
Yep. We got a new movie. We gotta circle back and make fun of Jared
Jackie
for
put
not
some stuff
asking
up
all
there.
the right questions on his interview with the soundtrack director.
So I'm telling you, so tomorrow the video will be public tomorrow morning. So people can watch the interview with Grimon Prez and get all your criticisms and notes ready. And when we get our timing scheduled up, we will have the response to that interview. And I really mean it. I think it's going to be like a top 10 quality conversation, given where we were headed in the text exchange. So
I'm looking forward. I really am. I'm looking forward to it. I want all the stuff that I'm not. I feel like I'm like 75% of the way where Ntume is with all his information. So I'm excited. So, all right, man. Well, you gotta get to a meeting. Don't be messing.
Yeah, I gotta get to a meeting. Because we making moves out here in these tree-lined streets. You know what I'm saying? So
there's no birds today, though.
Yeah, they were out there. I don't know. Maybe they just weren't. Maybe I had the windows more closed today. I don't know. It's colder today, so I don't know. But listen, this has been great. Shout out to Brother Stubblefield and the whole back crew, and thanks to him and all of them for coming on. Thanks to the both of you, to everybody in the chat. Peace only if you're willing to fight for it. As Fred Hampton used to say. See you next time with more Saturday with Renee.